What's up, YouTube? I'm here to do my predictions for UFC Fight Night, Maia versus Askren. Let's start at the bottom. The first fight is Rafael Nunes versus Jeff Hughes, and to me, Rafael showed that he's in his UFC debut. He's a decent striker, but his overall ground game is just mediocre at best. I felt like as soon as the fight hit the ground, he got submitted pretty quick, and I think Jeff Hughes is a better wrestler than I think it was Surreal Gain he fought in his last fight. So I feel like Jeff, as long as he doesn't get caught by a big shot early, is eventually just going to walk down Nunes, clinch with him against the fence, take him to the ground, beat him up there, and maybe win by TKO or submission in the first or second round. Next is Loma Lookbrum versus Alexandra Albu, and all I know about Loma is that she's a good striker. She's 3-0. But other than that, I really don't know too much about her. I'm just slightly leaning towards Albu just because I know she's more well-rounded. I've seen her fight more. I do think this fight could go either way. These chicks are both so early in their career. It's 3-0 versus 3-1, but I just think Albu has the better ground game, so I'm just slightly leaning towards her to win by submission. Next is Sergey Pavlovich versus Marcus Green, and to me, I just think Sergey has a big advantage in power. I also think his overall wrestling game is better than Marcus Green's. I think striking-wise, they're probably pretty close, but like I said, I think Sergey hits harder. If Marcus Green can use his movement and strike from the outside, I think he can win. He also has decent jiu-jitsu off his back, but like I said, I just think Sergey's the better wrestler and the better overall power hitter. So I'm going to lean towards him. I think he is going to get a takedown sooner or later. Once he does, I think he's going to finish Marcus with ground and pound from the top. Next is Enrique Barzola versus Musavar Elavone. And to me, Musavar is a very well-rounded guy. He's got wrestling, striking, and good submission game. To me, Enrique's pretty similar. I think it's really just whoever's got the better wrestling is going to win this fight because these guys fight pretty similar. They like to shoot for a lot of takedowns. They like to control guys from the top. They have good volume in their striking. I think Musavar hits a little bit harder, but I think Enrique does a little bit better with his volume. It's just tough to tell because I don't know which one of these guys is the better wrestler. Musavar might be a little bit better of a wrestler, but once again, it's one of those things where I'm not really sure which one of these guys has the better wrestling, and I'm just going to slightly lean towards Enrique just because of his experience. That's really the only big difference I can see between these two. But like I said, we're going to see once this fight happens. This is probably one of the toughest fights to pick on the whole card because, like I said, we don't know who's the much better wrestler until they get in there. But yeah, I'm going to lean towards Enrique. I think as long as he's using forward pressure, I think he's going to win at least 2 of the 3 rounds. Next is Alex White versus Rafael Faisan. And to me, this is basically just 2 strikers going at it, and I think Rafael is the better striker. I think Alex White actually has decent ground game, but he literally never uses it, so because of that, I'm just leaning towards Rafael. I think this is going to be a kickboxing match for as long as it lasts, and Alex White has been knocked out several times in his career, and because of that, I'm just leaning towards Faiza. You know, I think he just got caught in his last fight, but other than that, he's looked like an amazing striker, so I think he's going to win by knockout or TKO. I got some knots in my hair, sorry about that, guys. Next is Randa Marcos versus Ashley Yoder. To me, I think that this is basically just 2 jiu-jitsu ticks going at it. I think the big difference is I think Ronda's a little bit better at getting fights to the ground than Ashley is. I think her overall wrestling game is stronger. I think conditioning-wise, Ashley's a little bit better, but other than that, these chicks are pretty similar everywhere. But because Ronda's wrestling is a little bit better, I think she's going to win at least the first 2 rounds. She might get tired and lose the third, but I think she's good enough to where she'll win the first 2, give up the third, and win a 29-28 decision. Next is Muslim, can't say his last name, versus Leandro Staropoulos. This is basically 2 really good strikers going at it, but I think Muslim's just the much better striker. He's had a much longer kickboxing career. I think Staropoulos, you know, he's a good striker, but it's like MMA striking only. And like I said, I just think Muslims compete at a much higher level when it comes to striking, and I think because of that, he's eventually going to catch Staropoulos and win by knockout in like the second round. Next is Surreal Gain versus Dontel Mays, and to me, Dontel Mays, you know, his record's like 6-2, but one of those losses was like a DQ loss when he was winning, and he used to like an illegal knee or an elbow. Other than that, he has that 1 decision loss on the first time he was on Dana White's Looking for a Fight, but won the second time. I think Surreal Gain is the better striker of the 2. These guys are both basically just strikers. I think overall wrestling, Dante might be a little bit better, but I think Surreal has the better grappling game overall. I think this fight will be on the feet the whole time, and like I said, I just think Surreal's the better striker, so I'm leaning towards him. I don't know if he'll get a finish, but I do think he's going to win at least 2 of the 3 rounds and get a 29-28 decision. Next, we got Frank Camacho versus Beneil Dariush, and I just think these guys have. I think Frank, other than like the fact that he loads up a lot more in his striking, they're pretty similar, like wrestling and jiu-jitsu wise. I think the biggest thing is Beneil's conditioning. I think that Frank cuts a lot of weight to make 55. I think he always kind of struggles in fights that have kind of fast paces that he can't control. And I think that's all Beneil needs to really do is just keep forward pressure on him, and I think he'll eventually get the finish in like the late second, early third. I think other than Frank catching Beneil with a big punch, I think Beneil, the first round will be close. The second round, we're going to see Frank slow down. And then, like I said, I think Beneil's going to get either a late second, early third finish. I just think his striking overall is a little bit more technical. And like I said, his pace, that's the biggest thing, is his pace and his conditioning are both much better than Frank's. And I think he's going to use both those things to win this. Next, we got Michael Johnson versus Stevie Ray. And this is basically two really good strikers going at it. I think Stevie Ray's the better grappler overall, but I think Michael Johnson's takedown defense is too good to make that even matter. I think the biggest difference is Michael Johnson's durability. I know he's been finished a couple times, but I mean, I think part of that was kind of 145. And I mean, in his last fight, he was dominating Josh Emmett up until he got knocked out. He was winning that whole fight up until the last like minute and a half of the fight where it was that one big punch. The first 13 and a half minutes was all him. He looked amazing against a guy who was ranked like number 9 or 10 in his last fight. I just think the weight cut was making it a little bit easier for him to take the damage. And then I think now that he's at 55, he's going to have a little bit more punching power because I think he lost a little bit of that too at 45. And I think that, like I said, overall technique-wise, these guys are about the same. I just think Michael Johnson hits harder. And I think that's what we're going to see. It's going to be back and forth kickboxing match. Stevie Ray might shoot for a few takedowns here and there, and I don't think he'll get him. And I think eventually Michael Johnson's going to catch Stevie Ray with a big punch and knock him out, probably in the second round. Finally, we got Damian Maia versus Ben Askren. And this is a really tough fight to call because even though Damian Maia's lost to Woodley and then Covington and Usman, they all fight very differently than Ben Askren. They all have big wrestling advantages over Damian, but all three of those guys used it defensively to keep it on the feet to outstrike Damian Maia because they were better strikers than him. The big difference here is that Ben Askren doesn't have that big striking gap. If anything, I think Damian Maia has the advantage in striking. I think Ben Askren, he doesn't really use his wrestling defensively. He only ever uses it offensively because he wants to be on the ground. He doesn't care if guys are trying to take him down because where he's strong is in the scrambles. And that's something that I think is going to be interesting in this fight if it hits the ground because, like I said, in the stand-up department, I actually think Damian Maia is the better striker. I think he hits harder, and I think he's got the better boxing. I'm not saying he's a world-class striker. I'm just saying in this particular matchup, I do think he is the better striker. I also think he hits a lot harder because Damian Maia, we've seen, he's rocked dudes with punches before. He's just not a great striker, but he's got power and he's got confidence in his hands, which I don't think Ben Askren has. And like I said, if this is on the ground, that's what Damian Maia wants. He doesn't really care if he's on top or on bottom. If he's on bottom, he can go for those half-guard sweeps that he's really good with. My biggest fear, I would probably pick Ben, but the fact is, I feel like the Robbie Lawler fight, he just got lucky that Herb stopped it early. He basically almost got knocked out like 3 times in that fight, and then he just fought Masvidal, and he got knocked out right away. Both those fights happened this year. Like, that's something that people forget. I mean, he's fighting sooner than Masvidal is. Like, you know what I mean? Masvidal's fighting next week, and Masvidal didn't take any damage in that fight. Askren got knocked the fuck out. I think the biggest thing is that damage that he's taken. Like I said, I think Maia's the better striker, and I think if I was him, I'd just go out there and wing punches at him, because his chin's probably not fully recovered. He's probably not fully recovered either. And like I said, worst case scenario, Ben tries to take to the ground, and there, I think it's pretty close. Overall, I think Damian Maia's going to catch him with a punch, in all honesty. I think it's hard for me to believe that Ben's fully recovered. And like I said, I think Maia always has a striking advantage, and I think he's going to win by first-round knockout. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.